Dr. Zaraxt, a respected physician from the Rillian Federation, was used to handling cases of the most bizarre and strange biology the galaxy had to offer. A species with no skeletal structure, an organism capable of regenerating lost limbs faster than the time it took to grow them, and even a sentient virus that could communicate with its hosts. All of these had been subjects of his research over the centuries. However, he had never encountered anything quite like humans. Zaraxt had first heard about humans from the distant representatives who had arrived at his station during an intergalactic summit. He had heard the whispers, seen the reports. Humans were an upstart species, newly discovered, short-lived, and biologically primitive. To many in the Federation, they were little more than a curiosity. But the more Zaraxt delved into their biology, the more intrigued he became, or so he thought. When an invitation had come from Earth, requesting an alliance with the Federation in exchange for advanced medical knowledge, Zaraxt saw it as little more than an opportunity to study an inferior species up close. His colleagues were skeptical. After all, human technology was primitive, and their medical knowledge had barely surpassed basic surgery and pharmaceuticals. However, he agreed to the meeting, with a small chuckle at the thought of humoring these young, unpolished creatures. Zaraxt had traveled to Earth's capital, where his shuttle landed in a pristine cityscape, the high-rise towers gleaming against the backdrop of blue skies. He was greeted by several human diplomats and, oddly, a single human doctor, Dr. Emma Grant, who led him to an area designed specifically for their medical research discussions. She greeted him warmly. "Dr. Zaraxt, it's a pleasure to have you here. We're excited for the opportunity to learn from you. We've heard so much about your advanced methods." Zaraxt, always diplomatic, offered his own greeting, though his mind wandered back to the scientific marvels he had witnessed in his travels. "I trust you will find the experience enlightening. The medical practices of the Federation are far beyond your current capabilities. I'm sure we'll have much to discuss." "I'm sure," Dr. Grant said, showing a polite smile, though her eyes suggested she had her own skepticism. Over the course of the meeting, Zaraxt began to express his thoughts on human biology. It was simple, unremarkable. The human body lacked the sophisticated complexity of many other species, and its organs, systems, and overall structure were inefficient. Their lifespan was shockingly short for a species that relied so heavily on their intelligence and resourcefulness. Humans were prone to illness and injury, and their immune system, while functional, was nowhere near the level of those of other advanced species. He couldn't help but laugh quietly to himself at how something so fragile had managed to survive in the harsh expanse of the universe. The fact that they had mastered space travel, yet their biology was so vulnerable, seemed like the cosmic equivalent of a paradox. How had they even made it this far? How had they evolved such resilience? He didn't know, but in the back of his mind, he assumed that with time and technological assistance, humans would improve. At least their species might eventually evolve, though it seemed more like a gradual, improbable process. Dr. Grant seemed to pick up on his subtle amusement. "I take it you're not impressed with our biology," she remarked with a half-smile. Emma smiled knowingly. "Maybe, but we don't give up easily, Dr. Zaraxt." "Oh, I can tell," he replied with a dismissive wave, before diving into a more clinical discussion. He spoke of the Rillian regenerative abilities, the long lifespan of the Veloxians, the advanced immune systems of the Itheri, the kinds of species whose biology had pushed the boundaries of what even he thought possible. He could barely conceal his amazement as he spoke of the intricacies of Rillian biology, how their cells could divide with precision beyond any human understanding, allowing them to regenerate organs in mere hours. Dr. Grant, ever the professional, didn't interrupt. She simply listened, her smile still in place, but her eyes sharp. The discussion continued for hours, with Zaraxt outlining the many flaws he saw in human biology, from the inefficiencies of their circulatory systems to the weaknesses of their immune responses. He took great pride in showing just how imperfect they were when compared to other species, in his mind reaffirming his belief that humanity was a species destined to fade into the background of galactic history, just one more failed experiment in the great vastness of the universe. Yet, Despite his dismissive attitude, there was one thing that kept gnawing at Zaraxt, Dr. Grant. There was a quiet, almost unshakable confidence in her, an intensity that he hadn't expected from such a primitive species. Something about her demeanor didn't match the naive expectations he had of humanity. Before he left Earth's capital to return to the Federation, Dr. Grant offered him a small token of goodwill, a chance to test his own conclusions about human biology. She had offered him a sample of human tissue, gathered from a volunteer who had agreed to undergo a series of tests. This, she explained, would be a unique opportunity for him to run a battery of tests, which he could analyze and submit his results to the Federation for further scrutiny. Zaraxt had accepted, albeit reluctantly. It wasn't that he doubted his conclusions, he had already made up his mind about humanity. The tests were more of a formality. He was already convinced of what he would find, the same flaws, the same inefficiencies that had plagued humanity's biology since the dawn of time. Back aboard his medical vessel, Zaraxt began running the tests on the human tissue sample. His scanners whirred and pulsed as they took readings, mapping the human cells with precision and ease. As expected, there were the usual anomalies. Human cells were riddled with imperfections, mutations, and signs of aging that he had never seen in the more advanced species he had studied. He even saw evidence of genetic damage that had accumulated over millennia. It was all textbook, or so he thought. However, as he continued the tests, something unexpected happened. His instruments began to register readings that were anomalous. At first, he assumed there had been some sort of malfunction, some glitch in the data, an error in the calculations. But after recalibrating his equipment several times, the results remained the same. The human cells were displaying signs of repair and resilience that Zaraxt had never encountered before. At first, he thought it was a fluke, perhaps a genetic mutation or a strange, isolated case. But the more he tested, the more obvious it became. Human biology, despite its flaws, had an inherent capacity for regeneration and repair that was unprecedented in his experience. It wasn't just about healing wounds or fighting off infections. Human cells seemed to possess an uncanny ability to adapt, to evolve in real time. Damage was repaired with an efficiency he had never seen in any other species, even those with the most advanced regenerative capabilities. It wasn't just that their biology was resilient, it was active, constantly working in ways that even the Rillians couldn't replicate. As the tests continued, it became clear that humanity's biological weaknesses were, in some strange way, also their greatest strength. The imperfections he had so easily dismissed were actually a unique advantage. The human body was far more adaptable, far more resilient than anything Zaraxt had ever encountered. The healing mechanisms were not just passive, they were proactive, constantly seeking ways to overcome challenges, to turn failure into strength. For the first time in his long career, Dr. Zaraxt found himself at a loss for words. It was no longer funny. In fact, it was terrifying. The data he had collected contradicted everything he had assumed about humanity. How could a species that had seemed so fragile, so fundamentally flawed, be capable of this level of biological sophistication? He quickly accessed the human databases he had been granted access to, looking for more information. The results came back. Humans had been known for their ability to endure harsh environments, for surviving diseases that would have wiped out entire populations of other species. But this was something far beyond what he had understood. Human biology was a ticking time bomb of adaptability. They might not live long lives by the standards of other species, but their ability to fight, to survive, to outlast the impossible was unparalleled. Zaraxt's mind raced. He had laughed at their biology, mocked their primitive nature, and now he was the one who had underestimated them. This wasn't just about strength or technology, it was something deeper. Something inherent in their very cells. This was a species that had the potential to outlive and overpower anything in its path, a species that would never simply fade away. The universe had severely underestimated them. His communication console blinked, signaling a message from Dr. Emma Grant. Dr. Zaraxt, her voice crackled over the line, calm and steady. I assume you've received the results. Zerax hesitated, but finally responded, his voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I have. And I must admit, I've made a grave error in judgment. Your biology. It's far more advanced than I could have ever anticipated. You were right all along. I was wrong. Dr. Grant's voice was calm, but there was a note of pride in it. I know, Doctor. Now, about that partnership. Zerax took a deep breath as he leaned back in his chair, the weight of his discovery settling in. For the first time in centuries, he was truly stunned. He had seen countless species and technologies, marveling at their achievements. But this was something different. Something he had never expected, nor had he ever been prepared to understand. The human body, so fragile in appearance, was actually a marvel of adaptability and survival. It was a biological paradox that had eluded the most advanced minds in the galaxy, including his own. Dr. Grant's voice echoed through the communicator again, her words holding a subtle confidence. You're welcome to come back to Earth anytime, Dr. Zerax. Perhaps this will be the beginning of something greater between our species. A knot tightened in his stomach. The implications were massive. Humanity was not just a primitive species, as he had believed. They were a rising force, one that could change the course of galactic history. But in order for that to happen, he needed to fully understand their biology, every nuance, every hidden advantage. I will need more time to fully analyze the results, Zerax replied, though it was more to himself than to her. This discovery. It changes everything. Dr. Grant's tone softened. We'll provide all the resources you need, Doctor. We want to work together, to share our knowledge. But it has to be on our terms. We don't need you to look down on us any longer. We need your respect. Zerax hesitated for a moment before responding. Respect? You have it, Dr. Grant. You've proven that humanity's biology is far more advanced than I thought. I underestimated you. I admit it. But the question now is, what comes next? The silence between them lingered for a moment, but then Dr. Grant spoke, her voice firm. You'll see it soon enough, Dr. Zerax. Humanity's future is not just about surviving. It's about becoming a force that will reshape this galaxy. We're not just trying to survive anymore, we're here to lead. And I hope you'll be a part of that. Zerax sat back in his chair, his mind racing as the enormity of the situation unfolded. Humanity had never been just another species in the galaxy. Their biology was an enigma that the galaxy had overlooked, and now, with the knowledge of their true potential, it was clear that humanity's place in the galaxy could no longer be ignored. The Federation had always been the beacon of galactic power and knowledge. Yet, in the face of humanity's resilience, its ability to adapt and survive, it was clear that the Federation's position was no longer unchallenged. Humanity had the capacity to not just survive in this vast universe, but to thrive, perhaps even dominate it. Zerax quickly re-engaged his scanning equipment, running even more complex tests on the human genetic code, mapping every intricate detail he could find. The results were so astonishing that even his decades of experience in the medical field couldn't fully explain them. But one thing was certain, humans weren't just another species. They were an anomaly. An unstoppable force that was only just beginning to realize its true potential. The more Zerax studied, the more he understood the implications. Humanity's biology wasn't just about physical resilience. It was also about the mental and emotional drive to push past every obstacle, to overcome what would break any other species. Their minds, too, were built to endure, built to evolve. As he sat back, he realized something profound. Humanity wasn't a species trying to catch up. They had been quietly waiting, developing, and now, with the right knowledge and leadership, they were ready to ascend. The galaxy had only seen a glimpse of what humans were capable of, and the real power lay in their potential, hidden beneath layers of seemingly mundane biological flaws. The next few days passed in a blur as Zerax continued to run tests, comparing the human data with the results from other species. The conclusions were irrefutable. Humans had something no other species possessed: a unique, innate ability to evolve rapidly, to adapt in ways that outstripped even the most advanced genetic engineering technology. It wasn't just the fact that they healed faster or that their cells regenerated with such precision. It was their ability to grow stronger with every challenge, their ability to face down extinction and emerge more powerful. They were a species on the verge of a biological renaissance, and they had barely scratched the surface of what they could become. He thought of the Federation, with its centuries-old traditions of stability and control. They had long held the belief that only a select few species were capable of truly ruling the galaxy. But now, the idea of galactic dominance was shifting. It was no longer about advanced technology or ancient wisdom. It was about biology, about the ability to endure and adapt. Humanity had proven that they could take on anything the galaxy could throw at them and survive. But more than that, they could become stronger for it. The news of Zerax's findings spread quickly throughout the Federation, sparking a flurry of activity. The Rillian medical councils demanded to review his research, but he had already made up his mind. This wasn't just about medicine anymore, it was about politics. Humanity's rise would be inevitable, and the question was no longer whether the Federation could stop them, it was whether the Federation could keep up. Dr. Grant contacted him again a week later, this time with an entirely new proposition. "Dr. Zerax, we've been discussing your findings. And we've made a decision. Humanity is ready to make its mark on the galaxy. But we need your help to ensure that the Federation doesn't stifle our growth. We don't want to fight anyone, but we're not going to stand idly by either." Zerax felt a surge of unease. He knew what this meant. Humans had never been one to sit back and wait for change, they had always been the ones to drive it, even if it meant upending the established order. And now, they were asking for his help. He couldn't deny it any longer, humanity was a force to be reckoned with. They were on the cusp of something far greater than he had ever imagined, and if the Federation wasn't careful, they could find themselves overtaken by a species they had once dismissed as weak and primitive. But Zerax also understood something else. Humanity wasn't driven by conquest for conquest's sake. They didn't seek to dominate for the sake of power. Their motivations were driven by a deeper desire, a need to protect, to grow, to ensure their survival. They had the potential to lead, to shape the galaxy into something new, and Zerax couldn't help but feel that, if given the right guidance, they could be the galaxy's future. "You've already shown me the truth," Zerax said slowly, his voice filled with newfound respect. "And I'll be there to help you. I can help ensure that the Federation doesn't stand in your way. But understand this, the galaxy will change. You won't be just another species. You'll be a force that cannot be ignored." Dr. Grant's voice was steady, but there was a hint of something else in it, a glimmer of hope, perhaps, or even a sense of inevitability. "We're ready, Doctor. We've always been ready. Now, it's time for the rest of the galaxy to realize that too." Zerax took a deep breath. His thoughts raced, his mind still struggling to fully process what was happening. Humanity was not just another species to be catalogued. They were something else entirely, a species that had the power to change everything. The test results had come back, and they had shattered everything he had believed about them. Now, the true test was ahead. Could humanity truly step into their place as a dominant force in the galaxy? And, more importantly, would the galaxy be ready for them? As he sat in his lab, staring at the glowing data, Zerax knew one thing for certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. The days that followed were filled with both a sense of anticipation and unease. Zerax found himself pulled in many directions, his mind continuously reeling from the implications of his discovery. For all of his scientific accomplishments, all his years spent in the field of medicine and genetics, he had never felt so uncertain about the future. Humanity was no longer just a curiosity, they were an enigma that defied every conventional understanding of biological progression, and they were poised to reshape everything. He had always believed that the Federation, an organization that spanned thousands of worlds, each with centuries of advancement and wisdom, was invincible. Yet now, he had to confront a stark truth: the galaxy's perception of humans was drastically wrong. No longer could they be considered weak or primitive. They were evolving at a pace that defied the expectations of even the most advanced species. The more Zerax learned about humanity, the more he realized that their biology wasn't just a random quirk of nature, it was a blueprint for dominance. They weren't simply surviving, they were thriving in ways that other species had not been able to. Even with their limited lifespans and technology, humans were building resilience in a way that outclassed many of the galaxy's most powerful species. The Federation, for all its technological might, was still focused on maintaining its status quo, while humanity's future seemed to be one of limitless potential. Zerax had always been part of the establishment, working with the Federation to develop cures, treatments, and solutions to the problems that plagued countless worlds. But now, he found himself on the edge of a precipice, wondering if everything he had known was about to come crashing down. His communications panel buzzed again, pulling him from his thoughts. It was Dr. Emma Grant. He had expected her to reach out soon, but he didn't anticipate the urgency in her tone when she spoke. "Dr. Zerax, it's time," she said, her voice crisp but calm. "The Federation is not going to back down. We need you to act now before they do something we'll regret." Zerax's pulse quickened. "Act? What do you mean?" "We've seen their reactions to your findings, Doctor. They're not pleased. They want to suppress this information. They don't want the galaxy to realize what we're capable of, because it would upset the balance of power." Her words were sharp, direct, but tinged with a quiet resolve. "Humanity is ready to step into its place. And we need your help to make sure that happens." Zerax's mind raced. He could feel the weight of history pressing on his shoulders. He had underestimated humanity at every turn, but now he was asked to help them rise. It was no longer about medicine or biology, it was about the future of an entire species, and possibly the future of the galaxy. "I understand," Zerax replied after a long pause, his voice steady. "But this won't be easy. The Federation will fight back. They won't accept this new reality without resistance. We need to be strategic." "We know," Dr. Grant said. "We've been preparing. Humanity has already begun to quietly form alliances, building networks, and securing resources. We've been working with others who believe in what we're capable of. But we need your expertise. Your knowledge could tip the balance in our favor." Zerax thought about it for a moment. The Federation had long prided itself on its unity and collective power, but it was also a system that was rigid and slow to change. Humans were unpredictable, dynamic, adaptive, and relentless. They had the power to bring down centuries of established authority, not with brute force, but with their own unique strength. He glanced over the data from his experiments again. The numbers were irrefutable. The tests had shown what he hadn't expected: humanity's cells were rapidly adapting, healing, and evolving at an astonishing rate. Their immune systems were able to fend off infections that would have decimated other species, and their ability to survive in harsh environments was second to none. The more he learned, the more Zerax realized that humans were biologically prepared for a future of survival that the galaxy's other species could not even begin to fathom. It wasn't just about endurance. It was about an inner drive, a will to push forward no matter the cost. "I'll help you," Zerax said finally. "But we must proceed carefully. The Federation will not take kindly to this, and if they sense any threat, they will act decisively. We must be prepared for a fight, not just a biological one, but a political one." Dr. Grant's voice was firm. "We're ready. We've already begun laying the groundwork. But we need to act quickly, before the Federation can find a way to undermine us." Zerax took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a moment. The galaxy as he knew it was about to change forever. And humanity would be at the center of it. Over the next several days, Zerax worked alongside Dr. Grant, gathering all the data and resources he could to help bolster humanity's cause. They knew that their biological discoveries would give them a unique advantage, but the real challenge would lie in convincing the rest of the galaxy that humanity deserved a place at the table. And that would require more than just scientific proof. It would require diplomacy, alliances, and a level of strategy that could outsmart even the most entrenched powers in the Federation. Zeraxt found himself drafting reports, presenting humanity's case not just as a species with extraordinary potential, but as a species that could be a stabilizing force in the galaxy. If they were given the proper support, humanity could usher in a new era of peace and cooperation, or so he argued. But he also knew that not all factions in the Federation would be willing to embrace humanity's rise. Some would see them as a threat, an uncontrollable variable in a system that had long been governed by tradition and hierarchy. And if the Federation's conservative factions had their way, humanity would be kept in check, prevented from ascending to their rightful place among the stars. Zeraxt felt a deep, gnawing uncertainty as he sat at his desk, reviewing the reports. There was a moment when he wondered whether he was doing the right thing. Helping humanity was one thing, but enabling their rise might disrupt the delicate balance that had kept the galaxy stable for centuries. Could humanity handle such power? Would they use it wisely? Dr. Grant seemed to sense his doubts when they spoke again. "We've come a long way already, Doctor. You've seen the potential in us, and we're not going to let it go to waste. If the Federation won't recognize us for what we are, then we'll make them." Zerax's voice was soft, but filled with the weight of the situation. "The Federation is powerful, Dr. Grant. They won't relinquish their control easily. Even if we show them the strength of your biology, there will be resistance. We need to be prepared for the worst." "Then we will be," she replied, unwavering. "The world is changing, and it's time for humanity to take its place." Zeraxt couldn't deny the truth in her words. He had spent his entire career analyzing other species, dissecting their biology, learning their weaknesses, and studying their strengths. But now, as he examined humanity's place in the galaxy, he realized that the true strength of the human race wasn't just in their biology, it was in their determination, their drive, and their ability to adapt, no matter the circumstances. The galaxy had underestimated them for far too long. And now, it was time for the universe to learn what humanity was truly capable of. The day came when Dr. Grant called upon Zeraxt to help finalize humanity's first major diplomatic proposal to the Federation. They had spent weeks preparing for this moment, and now, the final document was ready to be presented. It wasn't just about gaining access to new technologies or securing new trade routes, it was about asserting humanity's place in the galaxy, demanding that they be recognized as a force to be reckoned with. The proposal outlined the advantages of human biology, not as a mere curiosity, but as the key to survival and strength in an ever-changing universe. It was a bold move, one that would force the Federation to acknowledge humanity's potential as a power in its own right. When Zeraxt submitted the report to the Federation Council, he knew there was no going back. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had reached the tipping point, and now, the question was no longer whether they would survive, but how they would change the very fabric of the galaxy itself. And as he stood before the council, watching as they read the proposal, Zeraxt could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. The galaxy had been warned. The question remained, would it be ready for what humanity was about to bring to the table? The future was uncertain. But one thing was clear, humanity was no longer a footnote in the history of the galaxy. They were the future. And that future was now.